I'd like to welcome you to this short video that introduces topic 3 of the QIS governance module, Roles and Responsibilities of the Board. So we have 5 topics in our governance module. You can see them there, and we have reached the one in the middle. This topic has 9 standards attached to it, from standard 7 to standard 15. And if you want the higher level award of QIS, then you have to be able to show evidence against every standard. Here's a summary of them, and then we'll look at them just very briefly in a little bit more detail, but so that we can see them on a page. 9 different standards for the roles and responsibilities of a board. Standard 7, ensure legal registration of the organisation. Standard 8, ensure legal compliance. Whatever that is in your country, the board is responsible for ensuring that it happens. Standard 9, they appoint, monitor and support the director. Standard 10, they're responsible for child protection and safeguarding policies. Standard 11, they're responsible for human resource policies and working conditions. Standard 12, organisational performance and management of the organisation, and that includes risk management. Standard 13, financial processes and the finance policy. Normally the process will be written in the policy. Standard 14, they develop, review and approve strategies and budgets. And standard 15, staff management. They need to ensure that there's adequate staff and that those staff are competent to deliver. And just to note that the functionality of these roles will be discussed in a bit more detail in standards 16 to 22 as to exactly how that works out. But for now, these 9 things that the board is responsible for and must delegate between itself. So here's standard 7. The board ensures that the organisation or church project is legally registered in some form. And the evidence that a verifier would look for is the legal registration documents. Normally that's a one-time event, and we would ask to see them. Standard 8. The board ensures the organisation or church project complies with its governing document, that would normally be the Constitution, with the local laws and the requirements of any relevant regulatory bodies. Obviously in different countries they are different, and so you would have to evidence your own governing document and then the laws which apply to you in your country, and then how you are fulfilling them. Let me give one example. It might be that if you're an NGO, you're supposed to report on an annual or possibly a quarterly basis to the NGO board, and so we would ask to see that evidence. Standard 9, the board is involved in interviewing and appointing the director and monitors his or her activities. I think that they are normally involved in interviewing or appointing, or a previous board has. Maybe the director has been there longer than the board. And I would like to see that there's greater support of a director in that role. It's not an easy role, and I would hope to see evidence that they are feeling well supported in all their responsibilities of making sure there's delivery. There's 3 ways that that might be evidenced. That there's a policy on recruitment, that the leadership staff would be interviewed and would say that they feel they're supported, and maybe there's minutes of meetings between the board and the director, or maybe the board chair and the director. Standard 10, the board has developed and approved a child protection policy and a safeguarding policy and monitors its implementation. What would be the evidence of that? That we see the child protection policy, we see the procedures for that policy being in place, safeguarding as well, and that there would be minutes that show that that policy has been reviewed. Standard 11, the board has set or approved basic working conditions for all workers and leaders, and that will include working hours and health and safety. And so to evidence that, we would expect to see some written policies and working conditions. Standard 12, the board ensures regular reviews of key aspects of the performance of the organisation or church project. That would normally come in the regular board meetings where the director would be reporting on what has happened. But there's some suggestions here that there's a deliberate schedule for reviewing different aspects of the organisation's performance. Maybe there's an annual board agenda. Sometimes it's looking at the legal compliance, sometimes at the safeguarding, sometimes at the HR management, sometimes at the finance, etc. So it's not just about project performance. Then we would expect to see action points that come from that, and there would also be a risk management policy that the board reviews regularly. Standard 13, the board reviews internal financial processes of the organisation or church project. So we would ask to know who is the board member responsible for reviewing financial processes. That would normally be the board treasurer. There should be a finance policy in place that's been signed off by the board, and some minutes that would show that quarterly and annual financial reports have been checked and approved by the treasurer or a finance subcommittee, however it functions in your organisation. Standard 14, together with key staff, the board helps to develop and reviews and approves strategies, budgets and plans for the year. So obviously they wouldn't be involved in the detail and the day-to-day working out of it, but we would expect that they have reviewed it and have approved it. So there needs to be sufficient involvement in that process. And the evidence of that would be that there are some minutes where those have been discussed and approved. And standard 15, which is the last in this series of 9, the board makes sure that the organisation or church project has enough workers who are competent and well organised in order to carry out its objectives. So there should be an organisational structure which shows which staff are doing which tasks and who's reporting to who, and the board should have had a part in that process. I would suggest that the board responsibilities would also be tagged onto that organisational structure in some way, that each board member knows their particular area. The homework I would like you to consider for the webinar is whether you are able to draw an organisational structure for your network or organisation or church or school based on those 9 roles and responsibilities. I'm not saying there has to be 9 roles of the board. Maybe those responsibilities could be shared. And how would that link to the staffing structure? So whether it's on the back of an envelope or a beautiful PowerPoint, it's okay. But try and think through that process. If this is the roles and responsibilities of the board, then what would that look like if you were drawing an organisational structure? Thank you for watching today, and we look forward to our webinar.